Hi everyone, I'm Yana from Pretty Pink Posh. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm very excited to be here with you for the Stamp and Scrapbook at Home event. Super excited to bring you some inspiration with the amazing Pretty Pink Posh products. Today we're going to be making these Christmas gift card holder cards. Now these are they can hold a gift card. These are fantastic as last minute Christmas gifts and cards. So let's get started. The idea is to create an easy gift card holder card or cards without the use of specialty supplies. All you need is a stamped image and a coordinating die to cut it out. We'll use that to partially hide the gift card on our card. I have images from two stamp sets here, the holiday signs. This is an adorable set with cute critters holding a blank sign where you can add a custom sentiment. I'll be using a Santa and also a signpost for my cards, but other images are just as cute. And what's awesome about this set is you already have several sentiment options to place inside that blank sign. And they, of course, are sized perfectly. You have happy holidays, happy winter if you want to make a winter card, not necessarily Christmas. You also have season's greetings, merry wishes, Christmas cheer, winter wishes, let it snow, and of course, a traditional Merry Christmas. So a really fun and versatile set for Christmas and winter cards alike. The other set that I have here is the Joy set. Now I'm only going to use two little accents from here, the candy cane and an ornament. I love to add little decorative elements to my cards, and this set has lots of fun pieces for Christmas and winter projects to help you dress up your cards. And of course, that large Joy is just fantastic, but we're not going to be using it today. I am using a Misty Stamp Positioner tool to help me get a perfect impression, and I'm going to stamp these using Memento Tuxedo Black ink onto Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. I do like to stamp my images several times to get that perfect, crisp black outline, and I can easily do that with the help of the Stamp Positioner tool. The next step is, of course, coloring. I like to color with Copic markers. I find them to be quick and quite easy to use, and I often go for simple coloring using 2 or 3 shades for a nice blend. I'm going to start by coloring Santa's face, and I'm using 𝐒𝐒𝐬𝐴 to color the entire face in, and then adding shading using 𝐒00 marker, and also using this same color to color his nose. I want to add some blush to his cheeks, so for that I'm using an R20 marker. I have a bit of bleeding happening here. Now that's because I didn't give the ink any time to dry, and I went straight to coloring, plus I stamped the image like 3 or 4 times, so I have a lot of ink here. Now I can fix that bleeding using a white pen that easily takes care of any problems, and here we go. Looks as good as new. Next, I'm going to color Santa's hat and outfit, and also the signpost and the candy cane red. For that, I'm using the R20 marker as my lightest color. Next, I'm adding R22 to the candy cane and to the signpost, and also adding a little bit of shading using R27. And finally, adding my darkest red, R39. Now, I'm not coloring the Santa in the same way. As for the Santa, I will actually go from dark to light. This will help me avoid having my markers bleed, as these areas that I'm coloring here are super tiny. So going from R39 to R27 to R22 and blending everything in using my lightest R20 marker. Next, I'm using W5, W3, and W1 markers to color his shoes. Also using W1 marker to add shading to the white areas on his hat, his beard, and his mittens. Now, as for the signpost, I'm using a C1 and C3 markers to add shading to the white stripes, just adding that on the left-hand side to help the signpost appear slightly dimensional, and doing the same for the candy cane and for the ornament. The stripe in the middle will be white, so I am adding shading to that stripe using my light gray marker. Next, I want to make the blank sign that Santa is holding. I want it to look like it is made out of wood. And to do that, I'm using flick style coloring and 4 brown markers, starting with the 𝐒𝐵31, my lightest, and I'm using this marker to make longest flicks on the paper. I like to turn my paper and always apply flicks in one direction. That is easier for me. It's easier for my hand this way. Next, I'm using 𝐒𝐵39 marker and repeating the same steps, but making the flicks slightly shorter this time. So I'm trying to color so that the center portion of the sign is the lightest and the sides are the darkest. I'm also keeping the center portion quite light as that's where I want to have a sentiment and I want it stamped in black. So I need the background to be fairly light. Next, using 𝐒𝐵37 and again adding more flicks, darker flicks, but shorter flicks. And finally, using my darkest marker here, 𝐒𝐵79, to add the darkest flicks, the shortest flicks to the sign. I'm using a very light hand when adding the flicks to the paper. I can also go back to 𝐒𝐵33 marker and extend the flicks a little bit further in if needed. Now, this is probably the easiest way to color wood grain texture using Copic markers. It might look complicated, but it really is quite easy to do, and I encourage you to give it a try. And if you don't want your sign to look like it is made out of wood, you can just keep it white and maybe add some shading to the edges using a couple of gray markers. Next, I used several green markers to color that ornament. I used 𝐲𝐢𝐭𝐡, 𝐲𝐢𝐭𝐡17, and 𝐲𝐢𝐭𝐡67. I wanted to add just a pop of green to my card, and coloring an ornament green seemed to work perfectly well for this idea. I cut my images out using coordinating dies. I did that off camera, and now I have my little Santa back in my Misty tool, and I'm just going to stamp a sentiment inside his sign. The sentiment that I picked reads Happy Holidays, and I'm stamping that in black using VersaFine Onyx Black ink to get that perfect black impression. We have our images ready. Now we need to make a background for our card and a slot to house the gift card in. I'm going to use our gorgeous Snowflakes stencil. It measures almost 6 inches square, so perfect size for an A2 card. I love to use my stencils as embossing tools, so I'm going to dry emboss a background for my card. It is very easy to do. You just need a die cutting machine and an embossing mat. I have my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine and this tan embossing mat here. This is basically a rubber mat that is used to emboss with dies, but can also be used to emboss with other tools such as stencil. So very cool. Now the sandwich for the Platinum machine is the following. You have base platform, then your tan embossing mat, then you place your cardstock panel that you want to emboss, then you add the stencil on top and you cover that with an embossing plate. If you are using a different die cutting machine, you'll need to check the instructions for your machine to see what sandwich you build to dry emboss. So this is a sandwich to dry emboss with dies, but it also works for dry embossing with stencils. If you've never tried this, I encourage you to give it a try. It's a really cool technique that really helps you to stretch your supplies. And the next step is super easy. Just send it through the machine to apply pressure and emboss the paper. Let's look at the result. I think it looks fantastic. Very subtle, the white on white, that always looks great, but it adds a very beautiful texture to the background. You have the embossed, the raised side, and also the debossed side. Now, sometimes depending on the stencil design, the debossed side looks cool as well, but for this particular design, we're going to use the embossed side for our card. Now, here is another example with a twist to using this stencil. I embossed it on some aqua cardstock. I applied white pigment ink over the embossing, and then I also shifted my stencil and applied another layer of snowflakes to create this blizzard-like look. Now, it's very easy to do, and if you prefer a more elaborate background like this one, let me show you how to make it. It's very easy. So here I have a panel of light blue cardstock. I've already dry embossed it like I just showed you. I repositioned my stencil directly over the embossing. I have an ink blending tool and white pigment ink, and I'm going to press the ink rather heavy-handedly onto the paper through the stencil. Now I'm not blending, I'm not doing the circular motion that you usually do when you blend, but rather I'm just loading my ink blending tool with ink and then pressing that ink onto the paper through the stencil. My stencil is not taped in place, I'm just holding it with one hand. I find I don't need to tape it, I can just as easily hold it in place. As I lift the stencil, you can see the beautiful snowflake design. So I now not only have embossing on my background, but I've also added ink to help the embossed snowflakes stand out a bit on the background. Next, I'm going to turn my stencil and rotate it slightly and ink blend more snowflakes onto the background. Now this time I'm using a very light hand and pressing just lightly to get lighter colored snowflakes on my background. And this creates that beautiful wintry snowflake blizzard look. I think it is just stunning and it was quite easy to make. You can also go back in and add more snowflakes here and there where you feel you need to add more. So create whichever background you prefer, a cleaner and simpler one that is just white on white, or a slightly more elaborate one with some added ink blending. Next, I wanted to add a snowy hill to my card and also add an additional sentiment. I picked a sentiment from our holiday greetings stamp set, and I'm stamping one that reads, "Sending you Christmas cheer." It's a two-part sentiment, so I have the Christmas cheer, and I'll add the little one that says, "Sending you." And just like I did before, I'm using my mini Misty to do the stamping, and I'm also using the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I trimmed this sentiment to be about 2.5 inches wide, and I'm going to use my scissors next to add a slope at the top. I don't want this to be a straight rectangle or square. I want there to be a hill. So I just cut a hill using my scissors, and it's so easy to do. Now, of course, you can use a hills die if you want, and Pretty Pink Posh offers several wonderful options for you to choose from. I'm just a little bit old school, and I often like to use my scissors for simple cuts like these. Now that we have all of our parts and pieces ready, we can assemble the card. This is the card layout that I have in mind. The gift card will hide behind the Santa and the signpost, and will also partly hide behind the sentiment panel. The gift card will slide into my background. Now, before I adhere anything down, I need to cut a slit in my panel for the gift card to slide in. I'm going to trace the sentiment panel using a pencil, and that will give me an idea of where I need to make the cut. I'm using my paper trimmer to make this slit in the paper, just using a craft knife to do that. And this is what it looks like. The gift card can easily go in and out. So we have our basic construction ready. Now we just need to disguise the cut and build our card. I used a pencil eraser and quickly erased that pencil line we no longer needed on the card. Next, I'm going to use foam adhesive squares and foam mount the sentiment panel on the background. I'm being careful here and mindful so that foam squares do not cover the cut line so that I'm not actually gluing it shut. I'm making sure that foam squares are all placed under that cut line so that I can easily insert the gift card into the card. Next, I can add my Santa and signpost. Now, I die cut identical shapes from white cardstock. I didn't do any stamping. I just used the coordinating dies. And I'm going to use foam adhesive squares to pop the colored shapes onto those blank shapes. This will add dimension to my die cuts, but will still allow me to insert the gift card into my card without the die cuts being adhered to the card. And I'm doing the same here for the signpost. I've married the two shapes together. I have the signpost going slightly behind my Santa, and now I've added just a touch of glue onto the bottom part of the signpost and behind Santa's feet, and that is what's going to hold these die cuts in place. And that's actually quite enough, once the glue dries, these will be firmly adhered onto the card and I'll be able to slide the gift card in and out easily. It's been a few minutes, so the glue is dry and I can try adding the gift card in. And it works like a charm. Now, whenever I build these gift card type cards, gift card holder cards, I like to regularly check if the gift card still goes into the card. You don't want to spend all this time building your beautiful project just to discover that you've added too much glue somewhere and you no longer can insert your gift card in. So better to double check a couple of times. I've also added the candy cane and the little ornament to the top part of the signpost. I think it adds a little bit of character to this card. Now I have an A2 side folding card base ready. So this card measures 4¼ by 5½ inches, and I'm going to adhere my background to the card. You do have to be careful here and only add adhesive around the perimeter of your panel. Otherwise, once again, your gift card will have nowhere to go. So see where I've added the double-sided tape? I did add some above the slit, but no tape under the slit, just a piece on the perimeter of the panel so that the gift card doesn't fall out. So we're basically keeping a pocket space under the slit to house the gift card in. And that's what it looks like. The gift card can easily go in and out. The best part about this type of cards is when you take the gift card out, the card still looks complete. It doesn't look like it's missing something. I'm using our Pretty Pink Posh jewels. These are in color ivory, and here I've scattered them around my card just to add a little bit of sparkle to this project. I even added one little jewel to Santa's hat. So here's a look at the 2 Christmas gift card holder cards I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this segment and certainly do enjoy the rest of the show. Bye!